It says, it was passed from the state for $49,000, but, the discussion at the meeting was for $50,000. I just was wondering exactly what that number is. Was that 50,000 just a ballpark?
Like 49
I
each.
think it's 49,800.
Okay, because
If I recall right.
the figure 50 was mentioned in the meeting,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if we could just correct that. And, under end of fiscal year report, in the second line, solar rays, should say solar arrays.
Yes, right.
Under executive session, in the second line, instead of defermental, it should say detrimental. And then I just have a couple of questions on items that were covered at that meeting, and I'm wondering if I could ask a question. On the hiring update, we discussed the fact that the 2 team chair positions were filled, and the high school sped position was about to be filled. Was that filled?
Not yet.
No? Still?
2 interviews next week.
Okay. And then, on the competitive grant information, under the finance update, we spoke that, Mrs. Demas was applying for a competitive grant that had to do with the evaluation instruments. I'm just wondering where that stands.
We've not
I
heard.
don't think we've heard back
We haven't
yet.
heard back yet.
Okay, but she submitted it, and it's,
Yeah.
She did.
we're just in a waiting pattern?
We're in a waiting, and I don't know if it's state or federal. In fairness, if it's federal, we know we have a longer wait.
Okay. Now, I just know that it was competitive, and we don't get many of those, so. Okay,
Yeah,
that's it.
I would ask for an amendment to the motion for amending solar arrays and the precise number of $49,800.
A motion to make those changes to the minutes accordingly.
And the word detrimental. needs
And the
to be
word
changed.
detrimental, the
Is there a
detrimental.
second?
A second.
And I'd ask for a vote on the amendment.
I'm Mary Goldberg.
Aye. Paul Green.
Aye, Paul Stewart.
Jean Stina.
And I'd ask for a vote on the original motion for passing the minutes of August 7, 2013. A vote.
Yes, Yes. Jean
Aye.
Stina.
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Okay. And one thing on the agenda, if you go under Superintendent's Report, Bullying Policy, JICFB, the first read, I would ask for an amendment to the agenda, as this is an amendment, not a first read.
One bus, number 5, there's at least 20 minutes of variation from when it sometimes picks up and other days. I know.
That's actually one of our fullest buses.
Okay.
Yes, that could be.
Bus 5, and I think that's.
Where does it go to?
Pond Street at least.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yes.
Beechwood, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's highly
Yeah.
dense
Yeah.
residential.
Right.
So there's a couple of comments the person had, and maybe personally, plus I think it's 4, the one that comes by my house, because it's very precise. But this one, I don't know if it requires maybe a relook at why it's. Even if it's full, it should be regimented. It shouldn't be variating. I would think, but so that's some feedback, and then also some would be suggested that parents are saying that a ton of people are picking up their kids now, maybe much more than
Yeah.
normal,
Yes.
Yeah.
perhaps due to the perceived or
Right.
issues with
And I
timing
think
and
a lot of
overcrowding.
that timing is at the beginning of the year too. You know, just trying
Just
to
settling into a
get
routine.
used to routes and the stops and so forth.
It could be. Could we ask Mr. LeCount or whoever the right person is to look into this person's idea anyway about restricting parking on the right-hand side?
Can I
Oh,
comment on that
please,
already?
yeah.
So, just so you know, what
The people parking there, the staff parking in the spaces would have to go somewhere else.
there are other spaces in there
Good.
that are still open.
Pickup lane on the right side
Their
of,
parking
it
spaces.
seems like,
There's about
The parking
10
spaces on the
spaces
right.
Oh, I
along
know.
the curb.
And when the parents come in, they're
Yeah.
actually coming in on the center of that
right.
entryway, and so the buses can't get by them all.
Another, to a different topic, but indicating that perhaps the school activity schedules weren't adjusted to accommodate the extra 10-minute school day?
Yes, well, what we're understanding, and I haven't spoken to anybody that does programming outside of school, but for students who might take an art lesson, ballet lesson, a karate lesson, those lessons didn't start later, so because we're ending 10 minutes later, the distance from when the kids get home to have to get in mom's car to go to someplace might be shortened so that it's easier to pick their child up at the end of the
I
day,
see.
causing more cars to come in.
They're not talking about school sanctioned
No.
well,
Well, they
school
could be.
activities, yeah.
They could be, but I think the bigger issue is students who.
I've been looking into it a little bit, and, you know, I think mostly within the town of Cohasset, they're pretty coordinated. It's just that a number of our people are involved in activities, South Shore Conservatory music, and, you know, ballet classes and
Yeah,
things.
this person specifically saying school activities weren't adjusted to accommodate the 10 minute.
Right.
So that would be something we could control, and
Yeah,
would make sense to
totally.
adjust.
Yeah, we'll check into that gladly. Thank you.
But they say at the elementary ages more than the high school.
This is an Osgood parent, yeah.
Yes, cause I've been looking at the high school, you know, to see.
Mhm.
But, I know the high school has, after school, they have the different extracurriculars, like, you know, running club and different
And
things.
athletics and so forth.
Yes,
I know,
and
I know
that,
we
at
had
middle
to,
school, this is sixth
we
grade.
had to adjust athletics at the high school
Yeah,
level.
sixth
I
grade was
wasn't aware of
adjusted, you know, for that period.
lower grades.
And there is a direct correlation with the fullness of the buses and the length of time that the
Time,
kids are on the
yeah.
bus.
Right,
That 20
more
minute
pickups.
swing could be because, and bus 5 is the route that we're on. So there are tons and tons of kids. So
Yeah.
if they have to stop, you know, at every stop, which
But
they do.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be the same every time, though, once you
No,
cut-
it's not, because people pick up their children after school, kids do all kinds of activities. And I don't
Absolutely.
think it's because of the length of the bus ride that they're doing it. I think it's because they need to get from point A to point B.
So you're saying
at
the
a certain
loading and
time.
unloading, depending on how many people show up at the stop,
Yeah,
can
that
make
would,
a
that would,
20-minute
Exactly.
that
difference.
would,
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
hurt the time.
You know, sometimes
Makes
I see the bus driver go right by a stop because there's nobody standing outside.
Right,
They slow down, come to a stop,
right,
and if there's nobody there, they take off right away.
right. But people were there to add another minute or two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like much, but when you have so many
When you
stops
add
on
on-
bus
when
route,
you
20
add
minutes
up
isn't
by the end
so
of
much.
20 minutes
Absolutely
isn't so
right.
much. I remember sometimes Lily used to get off the bus at 4 o'clock.
Now, is it worse in the morning or in
In the afternoon, it seemed to be worse. But
I think you're
What
correct
school
because
was
the
that, Paul?
activities
What
occur,
school
whereas
was
the
that?
morning's one
Exactly.
objective, and
Well,
that's
see,
getting to
part of the
school.
problem is that they're not getting to Osgood on time either, because of
well,
the,
we're already late.
because they're late from the other school
Right.
being dropped
Oh,
off, so
geez.
that doesn't help either. And that's a lot to do with the crowding issue.
Yeah.
Right.
So we gotta, I know you guys are on it
Yeah.
to solve it, but it
Yeah.
needs to be solved.
Yeah.
Right, and we are working on it, and I think once the bus passes are distributed this week, we'll have a better sense of who is on and who is not on,
Right.
and that will help with our numbers.
Makes sense. Thanks.
And next, the special education coordinator program review.
So this evening I asked, Helene, you might have to guess, and in fairness to our faculty, that we owe it to them, to give them the timelines, the rules that they need to live by to make sure they're doing things, so they can do their job
Right.
accurately.
And the support to get
Yes.
it done.
Yeah.
And question, has there been a huge increase in IEPs? Is that part of it too in the last 6 years?
No.
Okay, so it wasn't an increase in IEPs, it was a transitional time, we had different leadership, that type of thing, and some things got, you know, fell through the cracks possibly.
Basically, I think
And
that
how
was
about
it.
technology? Have we had problems with technology? Has that been an issue with some of these things? You know, cause I
We
think.
have updated our system.
Yeah, cause, from what I gather, you know, I'm much more heavily involved in special ed, just because I'm seeing half your people in your country, stat,
Right,
whatever.
and
But,
I was
but
gonna s-
anyway, it just seems like, you know, that there would be a program that you, the director, would be aware of when things come up to do.
Yes.
You know, just like,
Yes, the new East Ed program allows me
Exactly.
a
That's what
significant higher
Cool.
level of oversight
exactly,
that our previous program did not allow.
yes, so we're on top of that.
Yes, and that's gonna make a huge difference because the program that we had, the eSped, talks with our database, whereas the last program we had did not talk with the database. Everything had to be done manually, and
Yeah,
it's just
but
the way it
sometimes,
is.
sometimes it worked manually because obviously we were perfect, so,
Mhm.
but whatever, so we'll see. Some of these things should be cleared up by that.
Yeah, a question, where do we stand in respect to other districts that are similar in size? Did they
I
give
honestly
any-
haven't done a
any background
comparison
at all
of-
as far as
We've compared.
I haven't. I can tell you my last district had 38 legal criteria that we were corrective action on, a significantly bigger district.
Right, and prior to that 6 years, it was almost every indicator was wrong.
Prior to.
Not here.
Not here,
Not
in her
here.
last
Not
district.
here.
Let's
Not
clarify,
here.
let's clarify.
That,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to really compare
Yeah.
a district to a district because
Right.
there's so many factors that go into why a coordinated program review comes out the way it does.
Yep.
Does the NEASC visit incorporate special ed review or no?
Not this coordinated program review, they look at all
Okay.
aspects, but not this.
Okay, just
Right.
curious.
Yep.
Yeah, remember when we got some results, there were some cohort groups that we weren't super strong in. We didn't meet improvements and things. Often some of those cohorts are things that we need to work on that dovetail into the work we do. I mean, that's kind of how I saw it in terms of the regular review.
Oh, okay.
It highlighted some of the things that we need to work on for all students.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
When will the CPR be available to the public?
I've been checking the Mass site, and it's not up there yet. So that is typically where it publishes first.
Are you talking about this big thing?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
even this, there was a lot of information.
Totally.
I'm not
You want
trained
my
by
copy?
Kate Gibbs. Yes.
You can give it back to me. You do so much work, you have my.
And you fill out, you say how many people live in the house.
Yep.
Another
No,
data
I-
point.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
this was shot.
One of the
Okay.
things where it came up was that, it was Sandcastles eliminated their kindergarten, and not all of them went to Cohasset, but
Correct.
that was a large bubble that came into the district that we you didn't normally have. I mean, it was there for many years, and that was one big blip of input of students and.
Right.
and
But they were gonna
attendance.
come eventually.
No, but
It was
kindergarten
just
was the problem.
kindergarten. Right, right,
Kindergarten,
right.
there were just so many kids that showed up without being on the census, and nobody knew they were there.
Yeah, I'm just
And that was
wondering
the
if you
problem.
get more reliable data if you just gave a survey to parents at those programs.
Right.
Well, we
See
have,
what you get back, I
yeah,
don't know.
I can also address that. We have a liaison in the kindergarten,
Right.
among the kindergarten teachers who checks in with all of the preschools. That's how we knew the count was so far off.
Okay.
But the fact is that we really, when you're planning your budget, you start in November. It's really important if parents are willing to submit their census. It helps us to keep an accurate count, because as the years go on, we know that the budget will get tighter and tighter and tighter. We're trying to make sure that we continue with the quality of
Yeah.
education that's been given thus far.
Yep, I like your.
Either moved in or didn't realize that was, you know,
Oh, yeah, 2 years
part of,
ago, I know
part
all
of the thing
sorts
that.
went in and registered their kids at the last minute.
Right, I mean, if you move in August, that's.
Never occurred to them like, oh, this could be a problem.
Yes.
And the other piece is that
It's free
way,
education, so.
yeah, that way in terms of kindergarten, we're trying to do as much in the spring now versus in the fall. And if parents have, turned in their census, we can contact them appropriately and help to move the process along.
Yep, the testing was great in the spring, by the way.
Good.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're off by 50%, you know you got a problem.
Right.
Can you add, maybe, we talked about this, like an RSVP card in a sense to all of the preschools in the area where they could say, hey, in November, I'm probably gonna send my child to public school for kindergarten,
We can look at
half
that,
day, full
sure.
day. Cause then you could get a really good indication, and if we have this connection anyway with the schools, give it to the director and ask all their parents to fill it out.
Mhm.
So just kind of along the same lines of what you're saying.
And then we can hope that they do.
Yeah, but again, if you're a parent and you see, am I gonna send my kids to Cohasset Public School for kindergarten, I'm probably gonna think seriously about filling that out.
Yep.
It's like reserve your slot now, not that you wouldn't have it if you throw it in the trash, but.
Right, no, I think that's a very valid idea. But we just, in terms of what tonight was,
It's a good idea.
It is a great idea. In terms of what tonight was, is really just to talk about where the numbers have been going and the potential for where they could go, if all those rooms are filled. But if they're not, they won't go that far. So,
Good.
but I wanted you as a committee to know that we're looking at all aspects, and as a district, we're trying to coordinate our efforts with the town to make sure that we are looking at everything and not just, one particular aspect and finding ourselves short. We wanna make sure
No,
everything's
there's growth. We
tied.
have to figure out how much.
Mhm.
I mean, the other thing was, a few years back, the planning board wasn't in direct contact with the schools, and now it's a little bit
I just
clearer.
picked up the phone and called. So helpful.
Because you
So
find
I
out how
check
many,
in regularly.
how many building permits are there, what are gonna be building, new buildings, tear downs, expansions that are not necessarily a new family, but you'll get an idea of what potential growth is there.
Yes, and at the same time, I've been checking in with other towns as to how they managed to get their census returns. Some towns had as high as 85% on the first round.
Yeah, we have to figure that out.
And so I've talked with how they've been doing it, and then Mr. Milanowski and I have been talking about how we can improve the census return in town here
Right.
to help us.
That would be great, cause ours is really low.
Hopefully not
Not
between
now.
Arundel and everybody else, we will get it back where it needs to be.
They get a free coupon to Pizza Hut.
Do we have one in town?
No.
Anyway, any other questions before we go on?
Just
To initiate a program, you can't build a program that asks parents to, if they like to bring their children back, and if the parents say no, then you're sitting with an empty classroom and a teacher being paid.
and
That you schedule a separate meeting outside of this, because this was just to talk about where we're going in terms of enrollment, but if you wanna talk about particular programs, I would be glad to meet with you outside of the meeting.
There was a lengthy discussion with Ms. Balani last year. It may be.
For example, it's a difficult situation.
So I would be glad to meet
So
with you
I think
outside
that-
of this meeting, but this probably isn't the place for that conversation at this time, because it's not on the agenda for tonight. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No?
Next up is the bullying policy. We had earlier amended that. There's a amendment to the original bullying policy, and it's not a first reading.
Right, so this is,
just wondering if a copy of the incident report form should be attached to this, or just generally speaking, are those held separately?
we have those that get submitted, but that didn't change. What I wanted was the language that did get changed, that needs to be voted on, because, and we just took it word for word out of the law. We didn't do anything else. So once that's done, we would then flip it all into black ink and post.
Yeah.
But
Motion to approve the bullying prevention and intervention plan.
Yes, I make a motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes 5-0. And the next one is the emergency plan. This is a first read.
yes.